Bradley Beal, Bradley Beal, Bradley Beal, paint him off, Brad. Psychos and sickos unite for another edition of PHNX Suns, and I've assembled a super team to try to do Mission Impossible. Of course. That's myself, Erik, Stephen to my right, Gerald to my left, Noah behind the Mac, making elite thumbnails and making all of the magic happen, and the most important people, the psychos and sickos, joining us here on a Tuesday afternoon. Hit that like button, like goal, same as always. Hit that subscribe button. We are less than 200 subscribers away from 40,000 subs.
Let's go.
Love that. But
40K.
We must go through the most difficult thing that anybody has ever done before, and that's finding a Bradley Beal deal that makes sense. Luckily, we have father of Goku, Gerald Bourguet, on the case, the leader of our team, trying to figure out a way for it to happen.
Yeah, working on it. Our mission, should I choose to accept it, which I did, unfortunately, is trying to find a Bradley Beal trade that works, that makes sense for the Suns, that makes sense for the other team involved. And I got to be honest with you, normally we start these off with disclaimers and, you know, I talk about how I don't want certain things to happen. This is just kind of spitballing to give everyone an idea of what's legal, what's realistic. With the Bradley Beal trade, it really does feel unrealistic that the Suns are going to be able to find a trade that works without having to sacrifice what little draft assets they have. Because if you're another team and you're taking on the remaining $111 million in 2 years on his contract, you've got to be okay with the fact that either you are a playoff team that needs what he brings specifically and are well insulated against some of his flaws, like availability, like defense, like all of that, or you're a team that's content with losing for the next couple of years, and the only incentive that you would have to take on that contract and be okay with losing is if the Suns attach an asset of some sort to it. So if the Suns are unwilling to attach draft capital to move Bradley Beal, then a trade probably isn't happening. There's like a 99% chance that's just not happening. But we are here to explore because we've got lots of time in the offseason and nothing better to do. So we're going to go through all these trade scenarios. I don't think any of these are likely, and we'll explain why. But just wanted everyone to be on the same page off the top because I understand that this is a Sisyphean task, if you will, and the Bradley Beal trades is my boulder.
That got Noah with a reaction.
Yeah, well, can you
don't know about Sisyphus?
define?
He doesn't know about Sisyphus.
So in Greek mythology, Sisyphus was the guy who was condemned in Tartarus to push the boulder up the hill, and every time he would get close, it would roll
it's
back down.
It's not what you caught
him.
in college, my friend.
Okay.
Oh, God.
All right.
Steven, Sandman in the chat.
Nah, you can go ahead
adds
and skip to
another
the show.
layer.
I'm good. I'm fine.
Adds
I'm happy
another
to
layer
talk
to
about
this.
basketball.
That's what I'm saying.
I'm happy to be alive.
That's
Let's
what I'm
go
trying
ahead.
to
We
do.
can go next
I'm trying
topic.
to do.
Yep, next topic. Yep.
Sandman in the chat also points out another thing. On top of all of what Gerald said, Sisyphus and all, it's also up to Bradley Beal, who has a no trade clause.
Yeah, it is. And I think that in addition to the complications of finding a location that he wants to go to, whether that location wants to accept all of the things that are in play with bringing in Bradley Beal, and it's not just him, the player, but the contract and all of that stuff makes it all complicated. But like we said, we're here to talk through it, at least in the realm of just speculation.
Yeah.
Right.
It's nothing more than a guess, a toss of a rock into a keyhole. Nothing's probably going to stick there, but, you know, we putting up shots, though.
We're putting up shots.
We are high-volume shooters here today.
And I will say, I do think the no-trade clause is obviously an issue. We can't be sending Bradley Beal to Utah and expecting him to waive it. But I do think at this point, he probably would be open to a change of scenery. His agent told us as much, that they don't deal in absolutes. I honestly think it's his salary that's the biggest obstacle compared to a no-trade clause. But that is still something that we have to factor into these talks as well.
Yeah, and I do think that as much as we sit here and say it's impossible and, oh, this couldn't happen or whatever, It's the NBA.
Yeah.
Anything is possible, especially like these trading of big contract guys. I know it's not the same because Brad has a no trade clause, but how many times did you hear this untradeable contract when somebody signs a deal? If it's a Russell Westbrook or a Zach LaVine, or at a certain point, even Chris Paul was considered an untradeable contract. Just go down the list and you always see these things come up. And the common denominator, Gerald, is most of the time they get traded anyway.
Yes.
So I think it's all on the table. It's all possible. Somebody's got to flame out. Somebody's got to talk themselves into it. And Bradley Beal has to want to do it as well. And maybe the Suns are going to have to attach some assets. In fact, that's more than likely. So buckle up. We got a lot to get into. Let's start with, and I'll preface this, Gerald put a lot of hard work. He has more trades on his Die Hard article over at gophnx.com. It is the second to last day that you're able to become a Die Hard for just $36 a month. So that deal is running out. gophnx.com/join to get all of Gerald's full Trade Machine Tuesday articles, where we go over way more trades there than we do here.
Mm-hmm.
That being said,
be 36 unbothered.
be 36 unbothered. There we go.
Be that.
That being said, some of these trade graphics might hurt your eyes or your ears. So
They hurt my heart putting them together, and my brain a little bit as well. Let's start with the first one.
woo! What a selling point. Yeah.
So we've got what do we got? The Chicago Bulls.
Yeah,
up
let's start with
first.
this fun one, huh?
So the Suns get Nikola Vucevic, they get Patrick Williams, and they get Javon Carter. Javon Carter would have to opt in. He has like a $6.8 million player option. I think he'd be willing to opt in if he knew he was getting traded back to the Suns, especially since his play time's dwindling. But that's what the Suns are getting. The Bulls are getting Bradley Beal and the Suns' 2027 first-round pick, which I think is the most, or it's between Utah, Cleveland, and Minnesota, the least favorable of those three. So right off the bat, Bulls have no reason to do this unless a pick is attached. So that is why a pick is in there. The return is not great. You do get two expirings in Nikola Vucevic. He's at like 21 million, and Javon Carter, he would be 6.8 million. So that's, about 30 million in expirings. And then you have to take on Pat Williams, the remaining, 72 million over 4 years on his contract for a player whose growth has really stagnated. So, Stephen, I'll kick it to you. Thoughts on this first one?
It'd be fun to see a familiar face in Javon Carter back in Phoenix. From my hometown, another player that's from that Maywood area.
Okay.
Went against him in high school, actually. Probably the toughest defender I went against. I'm not even going to lie to you.
Oh, yeah.
Strong hands. It was quick
you
with
played
his feet.
against Javon?
Yes, for 4 years.
So he's pretty good, you say?
Pretty good. Actually played baseball with him, too. We were younger, too.
Okay.
Long story thing, but it would be fun to see a familiar face back, someone that can add some things that they didn't have last season off the bench as a reserve guard. Patrick Williams is a project. That's what the P in Patrick stands for. And
Project.
I think the expectations that are gonna, yes, correct.
Project Pat.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think I think the way they're gonna have to invest in him development wise would align with where they're looking at things with Ryan Dunn as well as Oso Ighodaro. Obviously, he's been in the league for multiple years longer, but he really hasn't hit that curve that people were expecting for him to, especially with when he was drafted in comparison to the other competition that got drafted before and after him. And then lastly, obviously with Vooch, I think people think about the 3-point shooting, 5-out spacing first. I think this Suns having someone, as the context shifts again, that can not just do the traditional screen and short roll type of thing, someone that can throw the ball in for 4 post-ups a game or at the elbow and get viable offense out of that, can do all of the dribble handoff stuff, makes sense. So if this is one of the trades, one of the few locations that Beal agreed to go to, you could do a lot worse than getting those 3 players.
Nothing says we want to revamp our culture with gritty, defensive-minded players like Nikola Vucevic. I think it was very telling, Stephen, and I would have done the same thing, that when you started talking about this trade, the first player you mentioned was Javon Carter.
You had to massage it first.
Right. And I love Javon, man. I love Javon a lot. Some thoughts from the chat. IO says, don't worry, the other owners are not stupid enough to accept Bradley Beal. this might be a situation where that's not true in the Chicago Bulls. Sandman says not too high on Pat or Javon. Enslow says if this was the only offer, I would do it. Mario Not Bros 2 says if Suns fans hated Beal, wait until they get Patrick Williams on their team. We did the whole Pat Williams conversation, and even I think revisited a trade like this during the regular season when we approached the trade deadline. I would honestly do almost anything to get Bradley Beal off the team, more so than not loving the Vucevic part of it, which 1 year I can live with.
Yeah.
Pat Williams, 4 years, 17. I don't love, but I can live with a little bit more so than stretching Bradley Beal for nothing and paying more than that per year. And I like Javon, is giving up the first round pick. And I know, Gerald, that that's going to be a theme and that's something that the Suns probably have to do, but more so than taking back a player that I don't like or the other team doesn't want, I would be mainly focused, if I was the Suns, on just not giving up anything with Beal, if that could actually be possible.
Absolutely. And that's the part that's kind of fun about doing these trades as thought exercises, is because like from the Suns perspective, a lot of people are looking at this return and they're probably a little underwhelmed by what they're getting in return in terms of being able to compete next season. But honestly, I think the Suns are aware that they're going to take a step back next season between a KD trade, between getting out of Beal. And so Vucevic would actually address their center spot, even if it's just for a year. He does not fit their identity as far as being defensive minded, but he would be the best center they've had since DA. He's a guy who can spread the floor. He's a walking double-double. Honestly, I think we need to look at it from the Bulls' perspective too, because getting one first-round pick out of trading Vucevic and taking on Beal's contract is probably not enough for Chicago. And that's why I wrote in my article that I don't feel like this type of scenario is likely. They are getting out of Patrick Williams and the 4 years left on his deal. The Suns are probably in a position where they can tolerate that, I guess, a little bit more. But yeah, this one for me kind of falls apart for both sides a little bit. I don't think the Suns would be able to get Vooch and get rid of Beal for only one first round pick. And this would be contingent on the Chicago Bulls looking at, their 17-10 record after the All-Star break and saying, we're not going to put stock in that. We are going to finally blow it up and kind of rebuild like we should. I don't know if the Bulls front office is smart enough to do that yet.
I was going to say, bold for you to assume that they're there.
Well, they
If that's the case,
love
then
to play
Vooch would have got traded at his peak a couple of seasons ago, along with Zach LaVine and DeMar DeRozan.
Right.
And Alex Caruso when they went to Oklahoma City for a bag of chips. So both assume they might be thinking with a little bit more kind of forward thinking than that, but
don't they kind of scream like Bradley Beal team though? Because
they do.
Yeah, I'm sure that they want. I don't even know if they think, oh, I don't believe in this. They said literally, Arturas Karniasovas, their GM, said that the play-in was like their goal last year, right? And so
it was the goal this year too.
I think getting Bradley Beal, obviously you missed the play-in, but I think getting Bradley Beal kind of moves you towards that goal, but it's obviously keeping him under contract then for a couple of years after that as well. You're just going to have to hope that Chicago's and that they see something in Bradley Beal, and that also on top of all of this, Bradley Beal wants to go there.
Right.
And it's a cold weather city, right? But a big city with lots of culture.
And close to St. Louis, his hometown. So
yes,
there's that.
Close to that as well.
I do think this is the rough part. I think Vooch might be as good of a player as you could reasonably hope to get in a Bradley Beal trade.
If you're listening on audio, come look at my face right now.
I'm really sorry. I'm sorry, but we just got to set the tone for the rest of the
No,
of these
I know.
trades.
Well,
that's
especially
everything's thrown on the table. That's the best you're gonna get.
Yeah,
Gerald. Especially this next one is actually, in my opinion, worse.
Okay. Good.
Like a lot worse.
Okay.
Again, no offense to you, Gerald.
No, I get it.
But this one actually made me throw up.
Okay, that's fair. So let's get into our second trade here. We've got a trade with the Miami Heat. We know Pat Riley and the Heat love those superstars, and superstars love South Beach. So
why is Bradley Beal in this deal?
That is a fair question. So the Heat are getting Bradley Beal, and they're getting that same 2027 first-round pick. The Suns are getting 2 expiring contracts in Terry Rozier at about $26.6 million and Duncan Robinson at, $19.8 million.
Dear Lord, that's a lot of money for Terry Rozier and Duncan Robinson.
It's tough. This trade, look, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. This trade is gross. This trade is, you're not going to reap any of the benefits until next summer. which is kind of the point of all this. Like if you're trading Bradley Beal, you're trying to get out of that final year that he has the player option next summer. You're getting about $47 million in expiring contracts next summer. That's $47 in savings. And I think it lowers your cap sheet for this summer by $7 million as well. Look, Rozier has not been good. He's just not a good player for what his contract is. Duncan Robinson, he's a solid spot up shooter who you could either flip somewhere else or he could kind of soften the blow of a Grayson Allen trade. But yeah, attaching a first round pick to get rid of Beal and getting this in return it's rough.
Yeah, that trade is very, very tough. I didn't even say enough varies, but you get the point.
Yeah.
I don't imagine the Suns would want to be a salary dump location and getting off of Bradley Beal. Obviously, if it got to those extents, then they just close the door on all trades and they just go and waive and stretch them at that point.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's
And I don't know why.
That's tough.
I don't know why Miami
Ouch.
would want Bradley Beal, because my initial thought was, okay, I wonder, because Rozier and Robinson have such low value and one of them is literally being investigated by the FBI as we speak.
Mm-hmm.
If you could get away with not offering a first round pick and just say, hey, here's Beal, we'll take these two guys back, and then you're not giving up assets, and then you're done with those guys. Either you trade them for something, maybe a conditional second, or you just eat the salary for a year. That, like Mario in the chat says, would be better than waiving and stretching or holding on to him. So again, if those are the options, I'd do that. But, you know, if you have to attach a pick, which I imagine you would, for Miami to want a Bradley Beal who, again, has the same problem in Miami as he does in Phoenix, which is overlapping with their best creator and Tyler Hero at the shooting guard position.
He's still around by the time this trade might take place.
That's true. Tyler Hero might not be there in the future, but from a Bradley Beal perspective, is Miami a place that you would want to go to as well? Like, there's all three of those elements to it. Do the Suns want the return? Does Miami want Brad? And does Brad want Miami?
Well, I think we have seen the Heat reported as one of the destinations that Brad would be open to going, which, you know, that tracks. It's a warm weather city. Everybody loves living in Miami, especially if you're making as much money as he is. It's a nice place to live.
Different city, but
Right.
he played college ball in Florida.
Correct. Also a Florida guy. But yeah, this one is tough. And for me, Miami, I think they would the only reason you can kind of justify this is that they would be getting a 2027 pick, which they currently do not have a selection. I think that's going to either Charlotte or OKC right now. But yeah, this one is gross. And I saw someone say I would take Jaime Jaquez with the Suns, but unfortunately you're not getting Jaime Jaquez out of this deal.
Yeah, I'll take Bam Adebayo. How about that?
Give me Spo.
Give me Khalil
Oh yeah, bring Spo on the way back.
They can promote Chris Quinn himself.
There you go.
Now we're talking. T480 says all of these are rough. Well, I would say those are probably the two roughest. Actually depends on how you look at things, because there's a lot of different flavors of crap that we're going to be sampling for the rest of PHNX Suns. Stick around, hit that like button. What's not crap is Gerald's article over at gophnx.com. You can still become a diehard today up until tomorrow night for $36 for the first year. That, of course, includes diehard Discord access, a free shirt and hat every year, access to all of the diehard exclusive content on gophnx.com, and ad-free experience there as well, plus exclusive video and written content, including Steve and I have been doing playoff podcasts. We'll do another one of those either later this week or the start of next week, around when the first round winds up. So we'll be doing that as well. So much for you guys on the diehard level, but we're still bringing it to you here on PHNX Suns. More trades. What about the Wizards? What about the 76ers? And what about some three-teamers? We'll do all those right after our first break. It's been really nice outside. Been spending a lot of time outside, and I keep on thinking to myself, Eric, this won't last forever. And I know that's a sad way to think about it, but you can get happy again by talking to All Pro Shade Concepts. Because if you own a home here in the Valley, extend your outdoor living space with a roll-down patio shade. It blocks the sun, keeps your patio up to 20 degrees cooler in the shade, with hundreds of colors, durable fabric to withstand the Arizona sun, and everything that makes installation seamless Giannis, including a company that's been in business in the Valley for over 20 years, an A+ Better Business Bureau ranking, voted #1 by Ranking Arizona for patio shades in 2024. And of course, the people have rated them 5 stars on Google over 1,000 times. Licensed, bonded, and insured. Call 623-204-1476 or visit allproshadeconcepts.com right now to schedule your free estimate. Plus, massive news from David Kimmerly, president of America's most awarded Ford dealership, Sanderson Ford. Ford just announced From America for America employee pricing. Now you pay what he pays on the full lineup of new Fords with no hassle, no pressure, no nonsense, and no added markups. Employee pricing levels the playing field for Ford dealers, and everyone gets the same price, but with Sanderson Ford, they will put absolutely no addendums on it at all. Other Ford dealerships will not do that. Choose Sanderson Ford because they have an inventory and a 70-year reputation of treating you right. Ford is undeniably the most America-first automaker in the world. 80% of the vehicles Ford sells are assembled in factories located in America, and they will be less affected by tariffs. Now's the best time to buy a new Ford with From America for America employee pricing, and the people of Sanderson Ford, they want to take care of you. That excludes the 2025 Expedition, 2025 Super Duty, Raptors, Mustang, and Bronco specialty vehicles. We got some more gross trades to get into, but none of you guys are gross. We appreciate every single person hanging out with us in the chat and shooting, including Richard, all the way from Puerto Rico. Let's go, Richard. Appreciate all of our international viewers and listeners, especially those of you on audio. So beautiful, so wonderful. Rate us 5 stars wherever you listen to us. I want to remind people that PHNX is still doing watch parties as well, even if the Sun season is over. And you can join Derek and the PHNX crew for a D-backs watch party at Gila River Resorts Casinos Wild Horse Pass when the Snakes take on the Phillies. Go to gophnx.com/events. RSVP is free, just like those Suns watch parties. Just let us know that you're coming. Gerald, let us down easy. What's another trade that you cooked up?
All right, guys. Look, we got reporting from Mark Stein at the trade deadline that the Wizards mold the idea of bringing Bradley Beal back. We got a report from ESPN's Brian Windhorst and Ramona Shelburne that the Wizards and Hawks were the only teams that were potentially interested in trading for Bradley Beal, even though no substantive talks were ever held. The common denominator here, the Wizards. Let's send Brad back home to the place where he was happiest in his career.
I'm coming home, coming home.
Prep the return videos, prep the YouTube highlights. He's coming back.
Time to take my PTO.
Oh, God. Here we go again. So Wizards get Bradley Beal back. They also get a 2027 first-round pick. I know for the Suns, this kind of sucks. You're attaching yet another pick in a deal with the Wizards involving Bradley Beal. And you're getting back Jordan Poole and Rashawn Holmes, which is not the greatest return. Like Jordan Poole, he actually had career highs in, I think, points, assists, and 3-point percentage last year. He's also one of the NBA's most chaotic, memeable players for some of the mental mistakes that he made. But Rashawn Holmes is older now. He's an expiring contract. He's a backup big. He was a high-energy guy when he was here in Phoenix, and we know that he enjoyed his time here. But I'll kick it to you guys. Thoughts on the return of Bradley Beal?
Yeah.
Imagining Beal with Brian Keefe and all of the growth that he tried to get out of the Wizards last season, that would be certainly a choice for him to waive his no-trade clause to go there, because they're not going to be like a play-in team or a playoff team for at least 3 more seasons. And maybe 2 if Alex Sarr peaks out a little early and things like that. Jordan Carrington, like things like that. That's tough. But if it's nostalgia and it's comfortability that Beal wants, and that's the only outlet that doesn't involve him being waived and stretched from the Suns side, then by all means. I didn't say anything about the return for the Suns. So
yeah. Well, I love how divisive the chat is on this one. That's how you know you cooked up a good one, Girth. Lenny says, yes, please. B.S. Murray says, do it. Stephen Weiss says, I'm throwing up everywhere. Brian says, Poole should still be pretty solid. Girth Jr. says, kind of sucks is an understatement, Gerald. Brian says, trading a pick? No thanks. Enslow says, who would punch Poole if he joins the Suns? Before I get into breaking down Jordan Poole on the way back, we got to remember Jordley Poole.
Yes.
Noah, your favorite.
Bum, bum, ba-dum, bum.
Jordy, Jordy boo.
That graphic has had relevance exactly twice, and both times it's hit. You were 2 for 2. It only happens like twice a year, but every 6 months we get to pull that back out again, and it's fantastic. Good work, Noah.
Thank you.
I mean, it's going to be very relevant if this trade actually does go down. Again, don't love giving up a pick, and we'll go through a trade or two later that don't have picks attached to them. Rashawn Holmes, welcome home, big man. We don't really need you. I don't see you playing even with how not deep this center rotation is. And Jordan Poole, his contract has aged decently well, $31.8 million over the next 2 years, as opposed to Bradley Beal's $53.6 million over the next 2 years. So I would do this. Yep. I would do this. And I think for Washington, you talk yourself into thinking we got Chris Middleton, Marcus Smart, Bradley Beal. That's our group of old vets to mentor. Bilal Coulibaly, Bub Carrington, Alex Sard, Noah's favorite player. You know, there's a clear direction in Washington, and just taking Bradley Beal back to me makes no sense, Gerald, but taking Bradley Beal back with a pick and saying, hey, come home, accept a role, help us mentor these young guys, and maybe you can be at the end of your career back on this team when we're in the playoffs a couple years from now.
Yeah. You're not like I said off the top, you're probably not trading Bradley Beal in a lot of these trades without attaching a pick of some sort. So Poole is a decent player for where the Suns are in terms of Beal's value. It's not ideal, but you're shaving about $8.5 million off your cap sheet for next season with this trade, which helps between two players, and one of them isn't expiring, so that helps for next summer too.
What better state to go to for pool parties?
Yeah,
in Arizona, you can have them year round.
I can see the shirt now.
What I'm loving as well, which if that happens, we got to print that.
Lord knows he would enjoy the courtside entertainment as well during games.
Let's install defense and grit into our roster. Let's trade for Nikola Vucevic or Terry Rozier. Can I interest you in Jordan Poole, who everybody in the chat is pointing out was good on that championship team, was a massive part of it. I like him as a player, big contract, probably still overpaid for what he brings, but would be a lot better than what Bradley Beal brings you at this point. And you don't have Draymond on your team, so I do think that it would actually be a fun locker room presence with Poole, and I think that could be exciting. Enzo says at least he knows how to take a punch.
If we're gonna talk about that part, then you also have to bring up the fact that he did get benched in multiple of those actual NBA Finals games because of obviously him being a whole lot younger than
right,
and some of those same traits that had him not see the minutes that he saw in rounds prior to the finals have been a little bit louder with the Wizards. Obviously, there's more room for it when you're in a non-win now, non-urgency type scenario, but that's the kind of stigma that he has about him. So I don't expect for that to change overnight, all of a sudden getting traded to the Suns.
Right. He to me does not fit the identity that they're trying to establish. But again, with a Bradley Beal trade, beggars really can't be choosers. If you are trying to move him over trade and avoid waiving and stretching him, Jordan Poole is a Jordan Clarkson type. Like, he's the guy that can shoot you into games or easily shoot you out of them, and the defense leaves a lot to be desired. So,
speaking of being loud, shooting you out of games, and defense leaves a lot to be desired, let's go to who we have Bradley Beal being traded for next.
Vomits uncontrollably is what I wrote in my article. We got the Philadelphia 76ers receiving Bradley Beal and the Suns receiving Paul George.
Out.
This is gross.
I just saw a meme. It was a Shark Tank meme that was like, I'm out in like 1.38 seconds, like a record. That's me. I'm done for so many different reasons. One, don't need the podcasting competition here in the Valley.
True.
2, 3 years, $51.6 million per year. So you're adding on a year of pain with Paul George. And I also just think that he doesn't really have it anymore. In an ideal world, Stephen, a forward of what Paul George used to bring to the court would be an ideal fit next to Devin Booker. In reality, it's a little different.
Yeah, for one, that contract is tough. If you're adding another year of peril that you're trying to escape onto your books. And then the other thing is, there's few all-star caliber former all-stars that have played less games in recent memory than Bradley Beal has.
Mhm.
Paul George is nearly at the top of that list,
Mhm.
outside his current teammate Joel Embiid.
Mhm.
Ugh.
So that, as far as a dice roll, I know all of these trades are dice rolls. That's even further extents of a dice roll than that.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's a tough one. The only way I accept that trade is if he agrees to make a monthly appearance on our podcast.
Yeah,
That's
or just be under our network in general.
Yeah.
Which I don't think would happen. He'd be too intimidated
Because
by
at least
Girth.
we wouldn't have to worry about him being available on the court to hop on the podcast.
That's true.
That's my thing.
Yeah, and he's like, "Don't worry, I'll be free every Friday."
What's in the
PHNXP. Here we come.
In the trade machine that you plug this into, Gerald, I love this because it's +0 wins for the 76ers and +0 wins for the Suns.
You have
Everybody
changed
loses.
Nothing. Yeah. The only way that this feels like a feasible move, and I don't think it is based on what we heard at exit interviews from Ishbia in the front office, this would only make sense if you keep Kevin Durant and you're still trying to like win. But I think they've kind of accepted that they need to alter course. That's what all of the exit interviews were about. To your point, Stephen, Paul George played fewer games last year than Bradley Beal. So if you thought Beal's availability was a problem, Paul George only played half of the season. And again, he turns 35 this week. So he's about 3 full years older than Bradley Beal, if you were wondering. So yeah, I love the idea of Paul George a couple years ago, or even heading into this season. To be honest, I thought Philly getting Paul George, they were going to do some damage in the East, but between the injuries and just his own natural regression and him getting older, this move only makes sense if you're still trying to contend, and I don't think the Suns are counting on that.
Yeah. Also, chat's pointing it out. Paul George, Devin Booker,
Yes.
not the greatest of friends.
No.
But we have seen Book with guys like Jay Crowder make up and become good teammates. But I just extending the pain for an extra year. I can't do that.
No.
The only positive in this, and it speaks to where Paul George is as a player, is the Suns are giving up no future draft assets.
That is true. They're just getting a worse contract.
Which is insane.
Baffling.
Insane. Any other thoughts on Paul George before we move on?
Yeah, that'll be tough. If he was to ever strike a bit of good health, that would be a massive kind of game for the Suns, because you add a talent that's not redundant with Devin Booker in terms of the spaces he operates in, the types of actions he operates in, or just stature for stature. Get someone that's 6'9", about 215, 220, versatility galore rather. That's about what you would want to help mentor someone like Ryan Dunn. On top of all of that, that would come with spades of value that go past just a player for player swap. So
yeah,
but it's all contingent upon health, and recent memory does not suggest that it would be there for you.
Brian in the chat goes, at Eric Ruby, may I remind you, there's an 11-minute video of players hitting game winners on Paul George.
I mean, that's what, I can't even go that far. That's what comes with the territory when you are that guy that's defending all of those guys. You're going to get got. He's obviously got more than most people get got, but
yeah,
that's part of the territory. Same thing with rim protectors. There's no way you're a great rim protector and you've never got dunked on. Same way as point of attack defenders. If you've never got crossed over, you're probably not playing defense.
It's just a tough look when you combine that with probably the montages of him missing the game winners. That's the tough
and
one.
then in between, you have the montages of him talking trash on his podcast as well.
I did want to answer a question because someone asked, are any of these going to do Bradley Beal and KD? Are these Beal trades in conjoined with the KD trade? Mostly these are kind of independent. Next week, we are going to get into some crazier 3-team KD trades, some trades involving KD and Beal. So there's going to be a lot of good stuff. We just got to kind of space it out and give me a break, because coming up with these trades takes quite a while.
We also got a jump start on the offseason too. So
yeah, that's
that
what, you guys were planning to still be covering basketball right now?
I was.
I mean, if Matt Ishbia was, I definitely was.
Yeah, I was.
We all were. Well, we do have a couple of 3-team trades, including one from Stephen as well. So hit a like, hit that subscribe button. We're going to take you through those 3-team deals on the other side of our final break. Noah and I saw a movie yesterday. We saw the re-release of Revenge of the Sith in theaters.
Let's go.
It was good. There were some moments that made us laugh, though. There were some moments you're like, oh man, and especially for me, I was on some pure edibles, so I was really, really enjoying myself. Do it. But the best part of the movie wasn't just the movie, it was how I was feeling during it. I took a Bliss gummy, starfruit flavored, and wonderful tasting, wonderful feeling. But the best part about Pure Edibles is they don't just have one flavor, one effect, and all of their effects are clearly listed on their tin. So whatever unique blend of cannabinoids such as CBN, CBG, CBD, and of course THC they use, you'll know exactly how it makes you feel. From blissful to uplifted to sleepy, Pure Edibles is going to make sure you know what to expect, which is so important with edibles. Also, you can find some of those from one of the over 130 dispensaries across Arizona. That is a crazy comment, Brian.
You crazy person.
Master Skywalker,
Come
do
on.
you use Bet365?
Oh my god.
90 million people across the galaxy use Bet365.
Where's my lightsaber?
You want to kill me like a youngling, dude? Like I killed the competition in our Bet365.
Terrible.
All right, I'm sorry. But seriously,
Horrendous.
Bet365 is a wonderful place for you if you're trying to bet on the NBA playoffs, MLB regular season, they had a bunch of NFL draft props as well, NHL playoffs as well. They have everything over at Bet365, and now is a great time to get in. For new customers, you can get $150 in bonus bets when you bet $5 win or lose. Sign up, use code PHNX365, deposit 10, place a bet for 5, and get $150 in bonus bets if your bet wins or loses. Bonus bets can be used on spreads, totals, player props, futures, and more. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. You must be 21 plus and physically located in Arizona. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem and wants help, call 1-800-NEXT-STEP, text NEXT STEP to 53342, or visit problemgambling.az.gov. Enzo says, marketing just called. They pulled the sponsor. Please, Master Skywalker.
Did you compare our product to Anakin
To
slaughtering
slaughtering the
younglings? Wonderful.
You were supposed to be the chosen ad reader.
God bless.
Bring balance to the promotions, not destroy it.
Oh.
Okay.
Help is needed.
Well, I think out of a lot of these trades, Stephen, the Suns get maybe the most help from the one that you cooked up.
Yeah, going out on the limb here, and I think the dice roll dynamic that we spoke to is very much loud in this one. The Suns are giving up essentially all picks that they acquired at this most recent trade deadline.
Okay.
They will be getting Nick Claxton, Jonathan Isaac, and Gary Harris. From obviously Orlando and Brooklyn, the Magic will be receiving Bradley Beal and a 2026 first-round pick from the Suns. The Brooklyn Nets will be doing all teams a solid, taking on Contavious Caldwell-Pope's contract, as well as Goga Batadze, getting a young talent in Tristan da Silva, as well as multiple first-round picks and multiple second-round picks from Orlando and from Phoenix. So, thoughts on this trade?
Yes.
I mean, I love it for the Suns.
Yes.
I do not love it as much for Orlando.
I don't know why Orlando would do this besides overreacting to if they lose this series against the Celtics.
Yeah, I wish I could have gave the Sun or Orlando more, but the Suns just don't have.
They don't have.
They don't have the
Yeah.
facilities.
Don't have the facilities for that big man. Oh yeah, if you can walk away from a Bradley Beal deal with Claxton, Jonathan Isaac, and Gary Harris, that would be making magic out of a crappy situation. Pun intended.
Yeah, not happening. Don't think so.
Do
but
you think, I would like to pick your guys' brain on this, do you think if you shift one of those 2 first-round picks going to Brooklyn back to Orlando, so Orlando's getting 2 and the Nets are getting 1, since they are getting
Tristan da Silva.
do you think that they bite on that? Like, because I do know, like, I think I value Claxton pretty highly, but I do know that, like, the Nets were kind of waffling on his future, and there's a lot of Nets fans that are kind of like over him. I think that's an overreaction personally, but
Yeah, I feel like maybe you can get some of what the Nets are getting, especially because if they're high on Tristan da Silva, who didn't have a great rookie campaign.
yeah.
But obviously there's still a lot on the table there as well. I think that's a lot more likely for Orlando. I think that their window is closer than I think 2027, 2028, 2029 when a lot of these picks would come through. But getting another pick for them could be the sweetener that they need to move on. And you'd really just be talking yourself into, all right, Paolo is a playoff riser. Franz still has a little work to do when it comes to the playoffs. But as far as a regular season player goes, he's been fantastic. You just need some sort of on-ball creation from the guard spot. they'd have to be really big fans of Bradley Beal. Oren says Orlando won't do it. I think that's what holds this up more so than any other side saying no.
I agree. I do think, like, because I tried at the trade deadline, Orlando was every week we were talking about. Orlando should trade for Bradley Beal. Orlando should trade for Grayson Allen. I didn't have a single Magic Suns trade with those two teams alone because I think they are a first apron team this summer with some of their younger guys' new contract extensions kicking in. So they can't take back more salary than they're sending out. Taking on Bradley Beal's $53 million salary is kind of tough unless like a trade like this, Stephen, where you're sending out 5 players for 1 in return. It's hard to make the math work. So for those wondering, I really do like the Magic as a potential trade partner, especially in like 3 or 4 team configurations. But if you're wondering why I don't have any Beal Magic trades, it's because it's really hard to do now with their cap situation this summer.
Yeah, and that's definitely what I saw as I was trying to find something to construct along the lines of just actual trade. So, yeah, tough waters to navigate for the Suns, and I hope that's what this trade kind of helps to bring to the light more than anything else.
Yeah. Oren in the chat, who A, loved my Obi-Wan impersonation, but B, is also a Nets fan, says Day'Ron Sharpe is better than Claxton. In fact, your current center is better than Claxton.
I do not.
I would disagree.
I don't
Did you
agree
watch
with that. I
our
don't agree
current
with
center situation?
I think that Nick Claxton is somebody that would greatly benefit from having an on-ball creator that's as matured as Devin Booker is, playing within a spacing context that you could assume the Suns will have going into next season, and being able to put the skills that he has as a center offensively in tandem with those things. He can do things with the ball in his hands, run a little bit of pick and roll, things like that. And then defensively, if he gets with a team that has pieces on the perimeter that are better suited to allow for him to switch and play in space like the ways in which we saw Oso do in the latter half of the season, that's where you can kind of get the most out of Nick Claxton. I think he's a player that could very quickly find his way back into Defensive Player of the Year conversations like he was in 2020, 21, I believe. I think he finished top 9 of top 8, top 7, something like that.
Yeah, I would like to see him with a change of scenery because it does feel like his growth has kind of plateaued in the last few years. He's regressed a little bit. But
I think you make a great point with the rebounding part, though, because Claxton switches so much, and I sometimes even just starts possessions cross-matched before switching takes place, he doesn't spend nearly as much time in the paint and around the rim. That means that the other 4 players have to be hell-bent on grabbing rebounds and boxing out. So dynamics in play if you are bringing Claxton into your context.
Fred in the chat asks, Beal for Paul George. Philly buys out Beal. Who says no? We did talk about that earlier in the show, so make sure you check that out. If you're still hanging out with us here on a Tuesday afternoon, like so many of you are, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, help us get to 40,000 subscribers. We are so close, and if you are wonderful and amazing and listening on audio, rate us 5 stars if you do find the time to do so. Gerald, you said you did not find a deal to land Bradley Beal, bars on the Orlando Magic, but you do have a 3-team deal including the Orlando Magic.
I do. Let's get nuts a little bit. So we've got, look, we don't know what the future holds for Trae Young. Maybe the Hawks' new brass looks at him and his return to all-star form as someone who's untouchable, which would make sense to me. But maybe they come in and they want to rebuild through youth and they want to make changes and they want to get value for Trae Young now. The Orlando Magic to me would make sense as a potential suitor for Trae Young. So in this 3-team deal with the Suns and Hawks, they get Trae Young from Atlanta. They get Vit Krejci from Atlanta, who fits their mold because he's like a 6'8" point guard. And they get Grayson Allen to address their shooting. Between Trae Young and Grayson Allen, I think their shooting concerns are very taken care of here. The Hawks take on Bradley Beal's contract. They get Jonathan Isaac, Cole Anthony, Anthony Black, Tristan Da Silva, and 4 first-round picks in the process. Obviously, the Magic are getting Trae Young, so they do the heavy lifting on the pick front. They send a first-rounder in 2025, 2027, and 2029 that is top 10 protected, and the Suns send their 2027 pick. So the Hawks don't get a ton in terms of players. They would probably have to really like Jonathan Isaac or Anthony Black or Tristan Da Silva, who kind of had a rough rookie year, but they do get 4 first-rounders out of it at least. And then the Suns get 2 solid role players in Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, who can help with that defensive, gritty-minded identity they want. And they get a starting caliber center in Goga Bitadze, or at least they get someone who could potentially be a starting caliber center. He's kind of hopefully higher up on that Nick Richards spectrum of maybe he could thrive if he got a starting role.
Just to clarify, this is if the Suns get below one of the aprons so that they can send 2 players out because they're trading Bradley Beal and Grayson Allen?
Well, they do with this trade because they are shedding $40.5 million in salary with this deal. They do get below the second apron to where they can aggregate outgoing players.
Stephen, the chat likes this one. What about you?
Sign me up to see Jonathan Isaac and Dyson Daniels
Yeah.
defending on the same court together.
Mm-hmm.
I'm all for that. Orlando getting a guard that can space the floor is intriguing. Issue is we haven't seen Trae Young be off the ball much.
Yeah.
He's increased that since Quinn Snyder got to the Hawks, but it hasn't been by like a, oh my God, he can really be like a soft version of Steph Curry. Like that's not, I don't think that's in the cards for Trae. And I don't know if Orlando values him because of that. Because that means if you're bringing him in, your offensive context is shifting from whatever it is before him to immediately top 5 ball screen offense.
Yeah.
I don't know if they want to get to there without those two, obviously being Paulo and Franz spearheading that. I like it for them though, at least if it's a project, if they feel like they need to get more playoff ready and run more pick and roll, shift things a little bit more. I like it. And for the Suns to get KCP and Goga Bitadze, yes. I'm not quite sold yet on Goga as a starting center, but I do think that he is, to the spectrum point, further along in that process than Nick Richards is.
The Nick Richards spectrum is hilarious. But
Well, I mean, that's the barometer.
KCP is a rough one. Brian says KCP can get back to a role where he can flourish here in Phoenix, defend and hit threes.
Mhm.
So what are you supposed to do in Brooklyn? I mean, he is not.
He won't
looked
have
as,
another bad
or
season
Brooklyn
like
and
this one.
Orlando. Well, that's what you would think, right? But there are some guys that hit a certain age and their production does decline for whatever reason. And he played with Jokic, who we see makes players around him better. Now, I think out of all of the deals, this is the one where the Suns return is probably the best. Now, you're giving up an extra player and Grayson Allen, who is a tradable salary, and you're doing it for probably, in that case, a center like Goga. That's what the value you're kind of looking for in the Beal for KCP swap, and then a first-round pick. So you're giving up a little more, but I think you're getting 2 playable players. Don't love KCP, but I don't think he's completely empty. I like Goga, at least as somebody who can be in the center rotation, if not your surefire starter. Also under contract for 2 years, both of those guys. Goga under $10 million per year, which is a pretty good deal. I would do this.
Yeah, I think if you're the Suns, you definitely do this. I think if you're the Hawks, maybe you're questioning, why do I need the Suns involved at all? Yes, I'm getting an extra first-round pick in the process, but why don't I just ask Orlando for a 4th one if they are interested in trading for Trae Young? So that's a potential problem there. I think for Orlando, if you could get Trae Young and Grayson Allen to upgrade the offense a little bit, because I do think, obviously, you're going to have to shift your approach, but I do think we are seeing some problems for them on the offensive end in the way that they go about things with their personnel. So Trae Young would be, in a lot of ways, a shot in the arm for them. But yeah, I think for Atlanta, you would have to really be buying in on Jonathan Isaac, some of those youngsters, and then 4 first-round picks to pull the trigger on this.
Yeah. There's also another 3-team deal that you cooked up, Gerald. We have 2 more 3-team deals left. This next one also involves the Atlanta Hawks.
Yeah, and we got another Trae Young deal. This time the Rockets are receiving Trae Young. The Suns are getting Fred VanVleet, so the Rockets are kind of upgrading their point guard spot from one undersized point guard to one who is better, who is 5 years younger, and who is under contract for longer. And he would definitely help with their offense that we've seen sputter to a halt here in the playoffs. The Hawks are getting Beal again. They're getting Jabari Smith from Houston. They're getting Tari Eason. And then they are getting 4 first-round picks, 3 from the Rockets, which are technically the Suns, and the Suns' 2027 pick that they have from either Cleveland, Utah, or Minnesota. My thought on this, though, is I could see it, but I also feel like Houston will wait until they see, okay, what is KD's trade market? What is Giannis' trade market if he's unhappy and wants out? I have a hard time seeing them commit Jabari, Tari, 3 first-round picks to Trae Young when better superstars could be available in a couple of weeks.
I'm curious about. So for the Suns, obviously, you get Fred VanVleet expiring contract. Someone that helps to bridge that gap with the experimental season in the sense that next year is going to be for the Suns, albeit they want to make the playoffs.
Yep.
There will be a lot of moving parts involved with that. Trae Young in Houston is very interesting because they, not unlike Orlando, like I just got done speaking to, have a very interesting offensive spacing that they're working with, or lack thereof, and the ways that defense constrict the floor. The uniqueness, though, with Trae is that he's going to get two to the ball and pick and roll.
Yeah.
So if Şengün is now unlocked to further extents than he was this season, because he has a guard that can get two to the ball every single possession, and make every pass to use the defense as a pressure point at that point, that's interesting. I wonder how they would evaluate or assess Trae Young with their team because of that. And obviously having Amen Thompson to defend next to Trae, no different than Dyson Daniels, but in unique ways from that even more so, I think will help a lot too. I'm really curious what they would think about that, because if they
could talk themselves into it.
If they're in on it and they don't feel like they can get something better with this shift that they're trying to make, if they're using some of their youth to bring in a veteran win now type of player, I would be intrigued by it if I was Houston.
Yeah, I feel like if I'm Houston, I would much rather have a guy like a Trae Young, just because he matches more your timeline. I know he's not the youngest, but he is younger. Obviously, Giannis, if it comes out that he does want to leave, and all signs point to that as they're on the brink of elimination at the hands of the Pacers, that's going to be everybody's number one priority, is how can I get my hands on one of the greatest players of all time who is still in his prime. And so that might put a stop to everything. And of course, you'd rather have him, but either Milwaukee's keeping him or one team is getting him. And if you're Houston and you're not trying to push all your chips in on a Kevin Durant, who's, near the end of his career, then maybe you look at somebody like Trae Young and say there are clear deficiencies with this player, but we've seen that he can put an offense on his back. We've seen that he's come in the clutch. In playoffs, he hits his free throws, which is something that they did not do the other night.
Literally the reason why they're down 3-1. I know there's a lot of other things. It should be 2-2, though.
Yeah, so I could see Houston talking themselves into somebody like a Trae Young. Now, giving up that much for Trae Young, I don't know what his value would be. Somebody's asking if we're overvaluing him. Do you think that's possible, Gerald?
I mean, it's all possible. Like we've talked about many times, like beauty is in the eye of the beholder when it comes to trade talks, because we're just trying to provide kind of a gauge or a general framework, how many picks it ends up being, which specific players it ends up being. Sometimes there's only a certain set group of players that can make the trade math work. But it could be, you could go for one pick less from Houston or something like that. I genuinely don't know. I think, because people are bringing up, well, Giannis wouldn't want to go to Houston. It's not so much that Giannis definitely wants to go to Houston. It's that if you're the Rockets, you would wait on negotiating a trade like this until you find out you are in or out of the Giannis sweepstakes, until you are in or out of KD's interested landing spot. So those are all things to consider here. And someone brought this up in the chat. I wrote about this in the article as well. Just like with the last trade, the Hawks and Rockets don't necessarily need the Suns to facilitate this deal. Yes, they get an extra first-round pick, and Fred VanVleet goes to the Suns, but they could easily just replace Bradley Beal in Atlanta with Fred VanVleet in Atlanta and make the math work somehow that way. So they don't need the Suns involved in this to make this one work, which is a problem.
We're the annoying third wheel that just you can't get rid of. Hey, can I come to the movie?
Would you feel like Houston's giving up too much potentially in this trade? Or do you feel like this is like the only bit to get it across the finish line?
From Houston's perspective, I think you'd want to give up less.
Yeah.
But
that's why I'm asking, yeah.
You'd probably want to take a pick off the table if you are giving up Jabari Smith and Tyrese.
That's what I was going to ask. Is it picks or is it a player? Because I'm thinking about what's made them great is having one of Jabari and Tyree on the court with Amen and a point guard in Şengün. I just can't imagine they would want to give up both if they're not getting Giannis. Yeah, and that's probably the line. Even for KD, they wouldn't want to give up both of those two.
No, that's a fair question. And I think if you're Atlanta, then you turn and say, well, I could probably get a better deal from somebody else who wants Trae a little bit more. So again, these 3-team trades are especially hard because you've got a lot of different perspectives. Like it used to just be the 3 teams, but now you got to factor in, okay, if a superstar is getting traded, will he want to go there? Will he want to extend there? All of these different factors come into play.
Yep.
We do have one more 3-team trade that we'll get to here in a second. But first, a $20 super chat from Free TV. Thank you so much, Free TV. It says, guys, the most cold-hearted but logical trade is to trade Book because you will reap the most assets for him. Likely have to trade assets to dump Beal. Best future is to become the Beal show with a brighter asset future.
Well,
I would like to not be the Beal show.
Would you broadcast the Bill show on your free TV? Free TV? That's my question. Stop joking. I don't agree. Obviously, yes, you would get the most value in terms of assets, young players, and picks for Devin Booker, but that sets you back like 6 years from where you hope to be after next season.
Yeah.
Are you willing to, roll with that gambit? And I know Matt Ishby is not, so.
No. And again, like, I hate to keep bringing this up, but they're not trading Devin Booker. So to be honest with me, like talking about trading Devin Booker, even though I understand the merits of it, is a non-starter because Book doesn't want to leave and the Suns don't want to trade him. So it's not happening. And I get why there's that impulse. I get why fans would look at the way that this team flamed out and fell so short that the only way back is to completely start over and rebuild from the ground up.
Yeah.
But a lot of teams, that takes forever. We saw it here firsthand for 2010 until they finally made it back to the playoffs 11 years later. And it took a lot of draft misfires and a lot of miserable seasons to get to that point where you even got a player like Devin Booker. So for me, I still think you have to take a step back to rebuild, but I don't think that if you keep Devin Booker, there's no path forward. I think you do have to nail a Kevin Durant trade. I think you do probably have to waive and stretch Bradley Beal because trades, you're going to have to attach something to him. But I do think there's a path forward. You just have to really nail the steps that are coming next.
Thank you for your super chat, Free TV.
Mm-hmm.
I get where you're coming from, but I'm out. Just like I was out on that other trade. But what about the last one? Can I interest you in Giannis Antetokounmpo? Well, we're not getting him, but he's a part of this deal.
He is. The Spurs are getting a frightening big three of Giannis, Wemby, and De'Aaron Fox.
Don't you dare throw Kyle Kuzma out of there.
I'm about to say,
Kyle
our only savior for the ending the Spurs dynasty is the fact that Kyle Kuzma is also in this.
He is a casualty they have to take on, but they will more than be willing to do that if it gets them the Greek Freak down in San Antonio. The Suns get Harrison Barnes' expiring contract and Keldon Johnson. And the Bucks get Bradley Beal, Devin Vassell, Stephon Castle, Jeremy Sohan, and 4 first-round picks, 3 of which come from the Spurs, 1 of which comes from the Suns. The Spurs do have some extra draft capital to play with because of the DeJounte Murray trade with Atlanta. They have some of the Hawks picks in that. So thoughts on this? I don't like the idea of assembling a super team for San Antonio, but in terms of moving off Bradley Beal, like, this return isn't awful.
I'm going to be honest with you. If you want to be relevant in the Western Conference over the next 5 to 10 years, do not bring Giannis here.
Giannis is older, though.
No, but
No.
Okay. When we talk about competing and not wasting Devin Booker's prime and all of that, getting rid of Bradley Beal is not worth handing the San Antonio Spurs, by the way, my second most hated franchise in the NBA, a franchise that has cursed us, giving them the player that cursed us in the damn finals.
Yeah.
No. I don't care what we're getting back. No.
Okay. I mean, that's fair.
No.
I do think, because I saw someone say that the Bucks, or Oren said Bucks will get more for Giannis elsewhere. I think it's possible. I don't know that that's set in stone. I think like Stephon Castle would probably be the sticking point. We know he was off limits in De'Aaron Fox trades, but there's a big difference between De'Aaron Fox and Giannis. Yeah. So I think that thinking might change if Giannis is like, yeah, I want to go play with Wemby down in San Antonio.
I think this is why, first of all, Sacramento not getting more in the De'Aaron Fox trade
Crazy.
Is insane.
Yeah.
But also why it was a great finesse job by the San Antonio Spurs keeping the likes of Vassell and Keldon Johnson to not just have the trade for Fox come in, but to also be able to add more talent. And there's not a better talent than they would want to add to their context than Giannis. And this would be exactly what they saved up those assets for in particular.
I'm not gonna lie, it would make me so mad. Not mad though at all of our wonderful viewers on TV. Just a reminder to you, the party always continues over at gophnx.com. And that means it's time for overtime. Hit that like button. We are all wrapped up here on trades. We'll do very rapid fire playoff predictions as some series are near their close, including the one that includes Giannis. Do we have any final thoughts on what I would say is a very successful Bradley Beal Trade Machine Tuesday?
Yeah, I think if your one takeaway from this episode is anything, it's that the Suns will probably seriously consider waiving and stretching him if they can agree to a buyout deal. If they, I know that it wouldn't make sense for Beal to sacrifice like $30 million and agree to an $80 million buyout, but he could easily make up that $30 million with a 2-year $30 million deal somewhere else when he signs his next contract. So it's not that extensive as people think. And, you know, yeah, $16 million on the books for the next 5 years would hurt. But if you are trying to be competitive and maximize Devin Booker's window over these next couple of years, you kind of got to get this ball rolling. And I don't see them finding a trade where they don't have to attach an asset just to get rid of Beal. So unfortunately, this is just kind of the nature of a trade that has come back to bite them.
Yeah, that's probably the biggest takeaway for sure. Also, I would just like to mention understanding the constraints the Suns are working with. It's one thing to be told what those things are in terms of the words and the complexities of actual trades with being a second tax apron team and things like that. And then you see us go out and construct trades that make sense in terms of on paper, but doesn't make sense for all existing parties. Mm-hmm. Does Bill actually want to go to any of these locations that we included with these trades? It just goes to show in a compiling fashion how complicated the entire just trade conversation process is to go with Bradley Beal.
Which is why we're all happy that the front office is figured out and there's no question marks and we're all good, right?
Yeah.
Right? No, actually not at all. Mark Stein on Southwest Bias with Espo reported, and he also put this in his newsletter, that James Jones is still leading the Suns coaching search. Stephen and I did a little mini trending pod, about 15 minutes right here on YouTube, also in your audio feed, so that can tide you over until tomorrow. Make sure you check that out. Before we get out of here, Free TV has another super chat, $5. Thank you again, Free TV. Ironic you're paying us money, but I love it so much. Anybody that super chats, you are near and dear to my heart. Says, any trade that facilitates the super team in the West is equal or worse than what you think trading Book would do to the Suns. Suns will be their doormat. I agree, Free TV. There is something about getting rid of Bradley Beal to give Giannis to the Spurs, that it just feels wrong. But maybe it happens. I don't know. I would rather just keep Bradley Beal, which is not something I honestly thought that I would say today.
Oh, wow.
Ever. Than give the Spurs Giannis. I'm also petty. Okay? So there's that side of it.
Yeah.
Let's do really rapid fire playoff check-ins and reactions right now. The Milwaukee Bucks are up 46-39 against the Pacers. Of course, that is the NBA TV game. That game almost at halftime. Milwaukee on the brink of elimination. Of course, we're keeping our eyes on that one. Detroit and New York play at 4:30. Detroit down 3-1 to the Knicks, but very, very close games. Orlando and Boston square off at 5:30. 3-1 lead for Boston, and 2-2 series. Clippers-Denver tip-off at 7. What are you guys keeping your eyes on the most tonight?
Tough break for the Pistons. It should be a 2-2 series. That should have been a foul, but unfortunately, I think they're probably going home tonight on the road. I think Boston probably closes it out, and Clippers-Nuggets continues to be an amazing series. The Clippers probably should have swept this series. They should be up 4-0 in this series, and they've dropped 2 brutal games they should have won. So I'm fascinated to see how they respond going back to Denver now.
Yeah, for the Clippers, this is why you cannot waste games in the playoffs, because it often comes back to bite you. To the extent of an all-time great game winner, it would not have nearly the impact that it does in terms of implications on the series had they not had the turnover barrage in game 1 in the fourth quarter, where they were up 18, 16, something like that in the fourth.
Right.
You can't waste those opportunities. It always comes back to bite you in that series. I'm curious if they can not do what Clippers teams in recent history have done and allow for that to trump them going through the finish line of the series and actually finish it. And then the other big one for Detroit. I think I sent you the tweet yesterday. They're 3-1 in Madison Square Garden this season.
Yes.
That bodes well for them. the Knicks have not been a team that closes out series well. I think that the blue-collar efforts of the Pistons get them another game back at Little Caesars Arena and Cade Cunningham, but also Malik Beasley has a large part to do with that.
Noah?
Well, obviously, Detroit basketball, but for the Suns fans, just not really vibing with the playoffs since, we missed it. I have this for you. Look it. You can root for the Pistons. Look at the Phoenix Pistons.
Hey, Suns fans, you sad about no playoff basketball? Root for the team down 3-1 in the first round.
Yeah. We need the support.
I do want the Pistons to win. I think New York could certainly put them to bed tonight. I feel like the same way with Boston. I'd like Orlando to win to make them feel a little closer to their goal. Maybe they want to push more chips to the table. I think Boston takes care of business. I think Denver wins tonight. And that is going to be brutal for the Clippers, but I'm praying the most on Milwaukee's downfall because the Giannis discourse this summer would be something else. Any other thoughts on teams not playing tonight? Obviously, Cleveland swept. Golden State went up 3-1 on Houston.
I mean, that bodes well for the Suns. You want as many of these potential suitors to be out of the playoffs earlier and be desperate and be looking at their offensive rating for the playoffs and saying, I wonder if a Kevin Durant could help us there. So good news if you're a Suns fan. I am kind of surprised to see the Lakers have the way they've gone down the last couple of games, but man, give all the credit in the world to Ant and the Timberwolves. They are tough.
Never go against the heart of a champion. The Golden State Warriors, to watch the Rockets find success and then within possessions of that success taking place, Golden State in real time, not 2 games, 2 weeks from now, in real time adjusting to counter and then take something off the table is always fun. Houston goes to inverted pick and roll the last 3 possessions of the game. They get a 3-point on the pop from Fred VanVleet. Şengün gets a drive to the basket on another. And then on the game-winning defensive possession, the Warriors adjust again, and Draymond gets an all-time great stop on Alfred Şengün. That's great.
That can't be the play call there, though. I mean, if you need a shot to win the game,
it is if it worked to the extent that it did to get you back there.
I don't care. Though,
the last 2 times they scored, they went to that exact action.
I get it, but
why would you not
game
go
on
against
the
the
line?
grain?
You're gonna give the ball to somebody who's getting guarded by Draymond Green.
Put the ball in your best player's
the
hands.
refs let that man get away with murder.
It is what it is. That's a great guy.
So I think you guys both agree that Kevin Durant is needed in Houston. I think that's
I mean,
that's what I pulled from
if
that.
KD was taking that last shot, if KD was on this team, they would be up.
Well, throwing him into that budding rivalry,
would be something.
That'd be fun.
Get your popcorn ready. That would be insane.
It'll be exciting. We'll be keeping tabs on all of it right here on PHNX Suns. Go ahead and give the show a follow on both Instagram and on Twitter at PHNX_Suns. Of course, our off-season coverage will always continue. We have a very fun week lined up for you all, so make sure you stay tuned. We appreciate Noah back where he belongs on PHNX Suns, behind the Mac, beeping and booping, making all the magic happen. As always, there you go. Hit that button, Noah. Appreciate Stephen. You can follow him at StephenPG3. That's Stephen with a PH. Also, as Mercury season ramps up, you can catch him on PHNX Mercury.
Media Day is tomorrow.
Of course, you can follow Gerald at Gerald Bourguet, cooking up bad trades as always, but it's not his fault. I promise. And you can follow me at ERIKRUBY. And we'll talk to you guys tomorrow.
We all silly like the mayor.